lovelies! Welcome back to another episode of our Meal Prep Made Easy series. As you know, I've been sharing brand new meal prep menus all month long. Meal prep menus are awesome because you can prepare them on Sunday and they'll really help you eat well throughout the week. Now this week's menu I'm really excited about because it's inspired by a ton of beautiful French flavors, which of course I love, but what's cool about it is that it is also completely meatless, so if you are either a vegetarian or you're just trying to eat less meat, this is the menu for you. Now keep in mind all of the tasty recipes in this week's meal prep are available in my third Meal Prep Made Easy ebook. All the details on the ebook are in the description box below, so you can take a look there. If you have not checked out my Meal Prep Made Easy ebooks 1 and 2, you should also check those out. They each have 6 original menus that are really delicious, really nutritious, and easy to prepare. I'm kicking things off today with a beautiful fire-roasted tomato bisque. I'm preparing it in my slow cooker, but you could definitely do this in a large soup pot on the stove if you wanted to. For this soup, I'm actually going to get started by preparing what's called a slurry. It's actually just a combination of a few tablespoons of flour with some water. You just whisk that all together, and that's gonna end up being the thickener for your soup. Next, I'm going to add some finely diced onions, celery, and carrots in our slow cooker. This is basically the perfect trifecta of flavor. In classic French cooking, it's called a mirepoix, very fancy name for onions, celery, and carrots. To that, we're going to add some fire-roasted diced tomatoes. Fire roasting tomatoes adds a whole other element of beautiful flavor to them. I will be honest, I did not can these myself. I actually purchased them at the grocery store. You can find them at most supermarkets. To amp up that tomato flavor even more, I'm using a super concentrated tomato paste. Then I'm going to top this all off with my broth, some heavy cream, and my flour slurry. Now I'm using heavy cream in this recipe because I think it adds a ton of beautiful richness, but if you want to keep this on the lighter side, go ahead and add milk instead. I'm also going to add a sprig of fresh thyme because that really brings a nice savoriness to this soup. And I'm going to finish it off by seasoning it with some salt and some pepper. I'm going to put my slow cooker on high and let this simmer away for 3 or 4 hours. When it's ready, I'm just going to remove the stem from my thyme and then give it a good blend with an immersion blender. If you're finding your soup isn't quite thick enough, you can go ahead and add a little more of that flour slurry. That will help it thicken right up. This yumminess can be enjoyed right away or stored in the refrigerator for up to 5 days. I like topping it with a little more fresh thyme, and if you wanted to make it extra delicious, go ahead and grate a little Parmesan on top. Good times. All the delicious. For our main dish this week, I am making a hearty white bean cassoulet. Now, a cassoulet is traditionally made with meat. This one is totally vegetarian, but if you wanted to sub in some meat, you could definitely add some chicken to this or some pork. Both would work really well. I'm gonna get started by melting some butter in a skillet over medium-high heat, because in French cooking, butter makes everything better. In pretty much all cooking, butter makes everything better, but particularly in French cooking. Now that all of that beautiful butter has melted, it's time to add some leeks, some carrots, some celery, and some parsnips that I've just peeled and finely chopped. If you've never tried a parsnip before, this is a great way to introduce it into your diet. It is a super tasty root vegetable that's got a little bit of pepperiness and sort of looks like a white carrot. After about 4 or 5 minutes, those veggies are going to be nice and soft. Your leeks are going to have turned a much brighter green, and that means it's time to add your garlic. In this case, I'm using 3 cloves of minced garlic, and I'm just gonna cook that up for about 30 seconds or until it becomes fragrant. Then it's time to add my navy beans and my broth, and I'm gonna finish all of this yumminess off by seasoning it with some fresh thyme, some fresh rosemary, and a bay leaf. We're just gonna put our herbs in whole, and not to worry, we're just gonna go get the stems later. I'm going to bring this mixture to a boil and then reduce my heat to medium and let it simmer away until most of the liquid has evaporated. In the meantime, I'm gonna get started on mixing up a nice crumb topping for my cassoulet. I'm starting with some breadcrumbs in a bowl, and I'm just going to flavor them with a little more minced garlic, some freshly grated lemon zest, some freshly chopped parsley, some salt, some pepper, and some olive oil. I'm just gonna mix that up with my hands until it's nice and crumbly, and then I'm going to set it aside. Once almost all of that liquid has evaporated, it's time to remove the stems from our thyme and our rosemary and that bay leaf. I'm gonna season this up with some salt and some pepper to taste, and then top it all off with that beautiful crumb mixture. Into the oven, this beauty goes at 375 degrees for between 10 and 15 minutes. You just wanna make sure all of those flavors have come together and that topping is nice and golden brown. You can serve this deliciousness immediately, straight out of the oven, or store it in your refrigerator for 4 or 5 days. I should warn you, you're going to be very, very hungry while preparing this. For our side this week, I am making a really easy rice pilaf. And I love this recipe because it's really easy to pull off. A lot of work goes into these puns, guys. I just want to let you know. It takes a team of 5 behind the camera to make these puns really sing. I'm gonna get started by melting some butter in a skillet over medium-high heat, and to that, I'm going to add some finely diced onion and some finely diced celery. We're going to saute that yumminess until it becomes nice and soft and translucent, and then we are going to add some minced garlic. We're gonna let that cook up for another 30 seconds or so before we add our rice. Now in this recipe, we are actually going to saute our rice for 2 or 3 minutes before we add our broth. This brings out a lot of nuttiness in the rice and just makes it extra yummy. We are going to top all of this with some broth. I've got some fresh thyme once again, and a big handful of freshly chopped parsley. Once it reaches a boil, we're gonna top this with an oven-safe lid. It is really critical that your skillet is oven-safe. If I haven't mentioned that, I will mention it now. We're gonna pop our oven-safe skillet into the oven at 375 for about 20 minutes or until all of the liquid has absorbed. And then this yummy rice pilaf is ready to be enjoyed. I like to top it with a little more fresh parsley. It just takes rice from here to somewhere around here. For our veggies this week, we are making a really rustic ratatouille, which is more than just a Pixar film. It's actually a tasty side dish. This yumminess all starts with some eggplant. I've just diced it up. If you are not an eggplant fan, actually ratatouille is the perfect way to ease yourself into it because it just becomes really beautiful and sort of melds with all the other flavors. So I've got some diced eggplant, some zucchini, some summer squash. I'm also adding some red and yellow bell pepper and finishing it all off with some coarsely chopped red onion. For flavor, I'm adding a few cloves of minced garlic, some tomato puree, a little dried oregano, and a good bunch of fresh basil and freshly chopped parsley. I'm going to toss this all together and then just pop it into the oven at 375 for 45 minutes until it becomes all gushy and mushy and delicious and stewy and yummy. You'll want to give it a good stir once or twice through the cooking process to make sure everything cooks evenly. And when it's ready, it is oh so delicious. This stuff can be eaten all on its own or on top of that rice pilaf we just finished making. Am I right? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. For lunch this week, we are making some seriously delicious protein-packed salads in a jar. These have a ton of great flavor, but also a lot of crunch, which I love. I'm gonna get started by mixing up my dressing. I'm starting with some freshly squeezed lemon juice, some olive oil, some minced garlic, some Dijon mustard, a good handful of freshly chopped parsley, and some salt and pepper. Pretty classic stuff. I'm gonna put the lid on my jar, give this all a good shake, and then divide my dressing into 5 larger jars. You do know how much I love my jars. Next, I'm simply going to layer in all sorts of yumminess. So I've got some cooked red skin potatoes, some steamed green beans, some chopped tomatoes and cucumber. I've got some chopped boiled egg for a lot of protein. I'm gonna top that with some finely sliced red onion and some beautiful niçoise olives. Keep in mind, these beauties have pits in them, so you wanna make sure you eat around the pit. When you're ready to enjoy these salads, all you need to do is give them a good shake, and then you can either pour them into a bowl or eat them right out of the jar. If you wanted to, you could also add some tuna, some salmon, or some chicken, or go ahead and leave it totally meat-free. It's up to you. This week, we are making a breakfast that is worth waking up for. We are making some goat cheese and leek quiche, and let me tell you, these are incredible. I'm getting started by melting some butter in a skillet on the stove. Once that butter is nice and melty, you are going to add a whole lot of leek to this recipe. You're gonna saute your leeks until they become nice and soft and they start to turn a slightly brighter green. That means it's time to take them off the heat and start to assemble our quiche. For this recipe, I'm using some store-bought mini tart shells. If you wanted to, you could definitely go ahead and make your own pie crust. That is definitely not my style, but if you're a kitchen superstar, go ahead and do that. You're simply going to divide your leeks into each tart shell, and then you're going to top them with a little crumbled goat cheese and a mixture of eggs and cream. Into the oven they go at 350 degrees for between 20 and 25 minutes. You'll know they're ready because they'll be nice and golden on top and the crust will be super, super crispy and yummy. The leeks really put this recipe in a league of its own. I'm just gonna eat more quiche. For my final recipe this week, I am making my new favorite snack. It's my pear and goat cheese spread with beautiful crumbled walnuts on top. Let me tell you, this recipe is going to change your life. Now, I traditionally don't use apples and pears in any meal prep because they tend to oxidize. But if you are going to cook them, you don't have that problem. So this is a great way to use pears. Now, I've simply cubed my pears and I'm putting them in a saucepan on the stove. I'm topping them with a good drizzle of honey and some cinnamon and a little bit of water. I'm going to let these simmer away over medium heat for between 20 and 30 minutes or until they become nice and soft and delicious. And then I'm just giving them a rough mash with a potato masher. To assemble my delicious spreads, all I'm doing is taking these adorable little mini mason jars. I've put a layer of goat cheese in the bottom. If you're not a goat cheese fan, you could actually also do this with vanilla yogurt and turn these into yummy little parfaits. That would be really good. I'm going to top my goat cheese with my pear compote and then finish this off with some crumbled walnuts and a little more honey. You're welcome. You can basically spread this on anything. I think it's best spread on French baguette. It is going to change your life. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try it. And of course, if you do, you should tweet me or Instagram me or Snapchat me a photo because I love seeing your creations. I really hope you guys love this week's menu as much as I do. All of the recipes are in our third Meal Prep Made Easy ebook. You can also check out Meal Prep Made Easy 1 and Meal Prep Made Easy 2 for even more delicious meal prep menus. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.